Hello, my name is Faisal. In order to understand concepts, it's always a good idea to watch documentaries, to read newspapers, to read books, go visit seminars, see people giving talks, etc. And when you have a culmination of these things, it will make you understand certain concepts better. I had a viewer who has been a long time subscriber, as short as my channel is. They asked me a very nice question. What are the best documentaries I can watch in these quasi or semi-quarantine times to get a better understanding of how money and banking works from a global perspective, a macro perspective, rather than a micro perspective? Well, there are so many documentaries I can recommend on, and they're all available on YouTube, by the way. So what I decided to do is I decided to, go to my sort of archive, and these are documentaries I visit and watch many times over. When I'm feeling bored or when I'm feeling I missed out on something, I always go watch them again. And here's the best part. Every time I watch them, I learn something new. No matter how small, but I do learn something new. Anyways, without any further ado, here are my top recommended documentaries of understanding the global banking system better. Here is the list of the 11 documentaries that I want you to watch. And the reason I've put them all out is, and why are we watching them? We are watching them so that we understand how money works. We are watching them to understand how money was created, how central banks were created, how banking was created, how merchant banking and correspondent banking was created, what are the boom-bust cycles, why credit is important, what is fractional reserve, why there's inequality in the world, what is offshore banking, why is money parked, why are there taxation havens, how is this enslavement for us, what is it that we need to do, how can we better the world? All this is important because if you zoom back and you have an understanding of let's say a very heuristic understanding of how money is made and why banking exists the way it exists, then I feel that you can do a whole lot better job. The first documentary is called 97% Owned, the Economic Truth documentary, How Money is Created. It's a 2-hour long documentary. It is a very, very good documentary that has, by the way, many internal links and associations and books, and all those internal links and references I will include in the description below for all the documentaries I'm mentioning. This one is particularly worth it because it tells you how in the modern world today, how currency debasement occurs, what currency wars are, why there's what is a current account deficit, how having a reserve currency plays to an advantage of one country versus the other, what is commercial money, how is it created, what is how do high street banks make money from it, etc., etc. Basic, simple things that most of us simply do not have an idea about. So this is 97% Owned, the Economic Truth documentary of how money is created. The next one is by Ray Dalio, and let me give you a little bit of understanding of who Ray Dalio is. Economics 101, how the economic machine works. Created by Ray Dalio. This is a simple but not simplistic and easy to follow 30-minute animated video that answers the question, how does the economy really work? As you all know, he is a very well regarded I believe he's an investment manager that controls one of the largest investment funds in the world, and he tells it in a very nice story what the cycles are, why is money created, why is it borrowed, why do we borrow money, why is there a credit and a lender and a borrower, and how does it work in society, how do we spend this money, and what does it mean for us. A documentary well worth it. Time and time again, every time I have watched this, and I believe me, I watched this over 50, 60 times, I learned something new. Really great documentary. The Four Horsemen, this is the one that I want to read off. This is called Four Horsemen, the feature documentary. I want to read off something. Renegade Incorporated brings you Four Horsemen, an award-winning independent feature documentary which lifts the lid on how the world really works. As we will never return to business as usual, 23 international thinkers, government advisors, and Wall Street money bank break their silence and explain how to establish a moral and a just society. The Four Horsemen is a free from mainstream media propaganda. The film doesn't bash bankers, criticize politicians, or get involved in conspiracy theories. It ignites the debate on how to usher a new economic paradigm into the world which would dramatically improve the quality of life for billions. So this is a really great documentary. There's a segment on Pakistan, which is from where I'm from, so I'm particularly, let's say, attached to this documentary. Well worth it, very professionally done, very, very cool. And because we are talking about inequality, I hope you're able to recognize this person. He is a famous economist. He is a Nobel Prize winning economist. His name is Dr. Paul Krugman. He is from New York. He writes for the New York Times as well. Although Dr. Krugman and I, Professor Krugman and I, don't agree on what cryptocurrencies are. He thinks they're garbage. We don't think so. And he is in with this talk with a gentleman that you may know. His name is Bill Moyers. And Bill Moyers is one of the most respected names out there in journalism. He retired a few years ago. But this book of his is basically, they're discussing this. This is the gentleman, this is an author called Thomas Piketty, and this is his book called Capital in the 21st Century. He's a Frenchman. He wrote this book, a pretty thick book, filled with, graphs and what have you. And it basically talks about capital and what they are talking, these two gentlemen on screen, is basically talking about, is there inequality in the world? And, if there is inequality in the world, then how come we're not fixing it? How come it's there? And basically, Dr. Krugman is telling you that the 1% where the money is being held, does not want you to know. They don't want you to know many things, specifically about money and so forth. It's all that, fancy terms like trickle-down economics, etc. There's a reason why all that is just BS and why the inequality exists. So an amazing, a very short 25-minute watch, but must see it. And like I said, I will include the links. The next one is Money Masters, History of Central Banking. So the reason I'm including this one is because it was done in 1996. It is one of the world's first, if not the earliest ever, documentaries done on breakdown of private banking and the nexus of control for international bankers. This is a gentleman who I believe he worked for the BBC or someone. He's a British reporter, and he goes on a very nice historic overview from UK into the New World, the United States, and how banking came into being, and how economists and how people of money and power and influence and control got together and basically set up what they have today, which is the central banking and the fractional reserve system, to which many are enslaved, so to speak. The Money Masters, the history of central banking, an amazing documentary done in 1996. So fantastic documentary to watch. The next one is The Princes of Yen, and this is again a central bank documentary of how the imperialistic Japan went from what it was to what it is today, and how it's really enshrined in this debt cycle, and how its entire monetary system was changed by a few people, and it brings it into the central banking and the enslavement that has caused what is known as the Greater Japan today. And it starts after, what happened after World War II. Well, a little bit before that, but basically, after World War II, how it basically became indebted, and how the people in power of banks basically brought Japan into their control, with the larger population absolutely having no idea of what was going on. The next one I want to talk is called The Spider's Web. So this is Britain's second empire, and the reason we're second empire is because Britain's second empire is banking. The first empire obviously was, as we all know, the colonies, etc. But the second empire is basically banking, and not just regular banking. We're talking about offshore private banks that Britain basically created into all its former colonies in the Caribbean, and took these islands with basically nothing and made these sugarcane establishments become one of the hotspots where 75% of the world's wealth is parked. And the reason it's parked there is not because this happens to be an opportunity. It's parked there by design. It was parked there because they wanted to evade certain laws that were basically prevalent in the United Kingdom. And now the fight over the Caribbean is basically United States wants all that money, Switzerland wants all that money, Germany wants all that money, UK wants all that money, EU wants that money, the Caribbeans want to keep it over there. And this is why there are, many de-risking going on amongst in the FATF world with United States sanctions and the de-dollarization of these economies, etc. But, like I said, it's done by design. It's a fantastic documentary to watch. A lot of people have no idea. A lot of people have no understanding. A lot of people have no basis of why there actually exists, and by design, with the government's approval, a couple of colonies that basically hold 75% of the world's wealth. And this documentary does a great job in explaining it. Fractional Reserve Banking documentary. This is a great documentary. It's done by this gentleman. I keep forgetting his name. It's mentioned at the start of the I think slide. Okay, it's not mentioned here. But anyways, you'll find out his name, etc. Maybe through one of the slides that we'll show. And he is, oh, there it is, Joseph Salerno. Salerno. He's a professor of economics in Pace University, and he does he's been invited to speak at this institute, and he does a really nice PowerPoint presentation that he explains on how, what is fractional reserve banking. I mean, if you really wanted to understand in a proper manner how fractional reserve banking really works, with a little bit of more numbers rather than a hand waving, this one actually explains it. Really, really good documentary, about 160 minutes long, but well worth it. The one that is really good is A Century of Enslavement, the History of the Federal Reserve. Many people don't know that the Federal Reserve that you see today is actually a private bank. It is a private bank partnership between some of the private banks of the world, in the United States, with the government, and it happens to be the version 3 of the Central Bank of the United States. There was the first Central Bank of the United States, and there was a second Central Bank of the United States. And then this is the third one. And rather than just calling the third, Central Bank of the United States or something like that, they basically renamed it and called it Federal Reserve. And it's a great, great documentary that tells you about why fractional reserve exists, why people just have no idea about money. As this gentleman is actually asking this gentleman, do you know where money comes from? And he's just saying, oh, we print it. He said, but how do we print it, etc. And he goes around town asking a lot of people. And you will see how aloof people are when it comes to the creation of money and where their money is and what is debt and why they are born into debt and what does it mean for them, etc. So this is why A Century of Enslavement. If there's a national debt, then basically if any child is born, you're born into debt. You have to understand that. And this documentary does a fantastic effort in explaining it. Next one is the book by G. Edward Griffin. It's called the same name, The Creature from Jekyll Island. This is a fantastic book. It tells you why Senator Aldrich and all his couple of his partners went down to this island off the coast of Georgia, which is called Jekyll Island, and from there they created what is basically called, it was a secret meeting that basically created the Federal Reserve. It's not so secret anymore now. They actually have tours of the Jekyll Island in the room in which the Federal Reserve was born, but it was born under a secrecy. And how it was done, this book basically does a fantastic job of researching it. After this book came out, very few people actually knew how the Federal Reserve in the United States was made. But after this book came out, it now became sort of public knowledge, if you will, of how the United States, Federal Reserve Banking came out. It's a great book. He also has another book called The Creature from... So this is a talk given at the John Birch Society. It's about an hour and 30 minutes. This is an hour and 90, which is about 90 minutes, The Creature from Jekyll Island. I will include both the links. They're both worth watching. Slightly different, but, very, very good, and makes it understand in such simple language how the money magicians are working. The last one I want to talk about is Zeitgeist. Zeitgeist, as you may or may not know, stands for Sign of Times. That's what it means. And this is the third edition, the third documentary in the Zeitgeist series, and it's called Addendum. And this is basically about money, how, we have vicious cycles, how loan money checks, the people, the interest rates, the foreclosures, the factories, the farms, the banks, and how the whole thing is running. it sort of deviates from its main goal as per certain people, that the documentary gets a little into conspiracy theories, etc. But then, what is a conspiracy theory? If you don't know, is it a conspiracy theory? If you know, is it a conspiracy theory? I'll leave that up to you. But again, slightly long, 2 hours, definitely worth a watch. I will include all the links to all the documentaries I've mentioned over here in the links below in the description, and then you can let me know more. So, what did you think of them? Do let me know in the comments below. Tell me which one was your favorite. If you have another one that you would like to recommend that I should watch, please again put it in the comments below. If you have a business inquiry, there's a contact form in the description below along with a WhatsApp. Till next time, this is Faisal Khan signing off.